I made this horror game on a 64 by 64 pixel canvas in just 2 weeks, and today, I'll be showing you how I did it. Hey everyone, my name is Skit, and recently, I took part in the LowRezJam over on itch.io. For anybody who doesn't know, the LowRezJam is a game jam where, rather than following a theme, you're forced to create a game that is 64 pixels by 64 pixels, or less. The LowRez team are still kind enough to provide 10 optional themes to inspire you and spark your creativity. The themes this year were Plants as Tools, Block, Ace in the Hole, The Sun is Your Enemy, You Are the Last Hope, Gravity Wells, Booby Traps, Kill It with Fire, Convergence, and Steamy. I finished and submitted the final build of my project about 2.5 hours before the deadline. I'll have a link in the description if you want to give it a try. Do note that there will be spoilers for my game in this video. If you want the true raw experience, go play the game now and come back to the video later. It's short, has 2 endings, and you can get both in 25 minutes tops. It's also free. You literally cannot pay for it if you want to. You have no reason not to play it. Unless you don't like horror games, in which case, yeah, that's fair enough. Enough rambling though, let's get into it. I started thinking about what sort of games you can make with a 64 by 64 canvas right as I joined the jam. There was still a week or so before the jam even started, but my brain loves thinking about things and I can't help it. I quickly settled on the idea of a horror game where the small resolution is used as a means of limiting the player's vision. I figured this would work perfectly, as the fear of the unknown is a pretty big one for a lot of people. There were still some things to iron out in this idea, but that could come later, since the jam hasn't even started at this point. Fast forward to the first day of the jam, and I am sleeping. It started at 10 PM. I wanted to sleep. So I slept. The actual day 1 of the jam started once I got home from school. I looked at the announcement on the Jam Raft's Discord server and one of the themes really stuck out to me, that being Kill It with Fire. I liked this idea a lot and figured I could take a page out of the book of Mr. Hop's Playhouse for this one. By splitting the game into 2 endings, one where you do complete your goal of escaping but the monster lives on, and another where you commit arson on your own house. Oh, spoilers for that game by the way, it's a bit late, but I tried. And so development began. I was already borrowing from Mr. Hop's Playhouse, so why not borrow some more? I decided to go for a similar gameplay style. One where you're unlocking doors with keys and whatnot while actively avoiding some monstrosity that's in your house. I opened Pixelorama and made some incredible placeholder art. Commission start at 10k. I booted up Godot and started coding the player first as that made the most sense to me. Getting the basic movements for the player down felt important, as it is one of the biggest factors in shaping any game. I decided to give the player a very basic control scheme. They can move around, jump, and interact with things. The jump really doesn't serve much purpose, but it does make the player feel that little bit more in control, and it's not difficult to code either. Next on the list were doors. The doors were a simple system. The player presses their interact key while in front of them and is transported to wherever the door wants you to go. It was now time for locks and keys. I used a core node, as I call it, to keep track of the player's current item. When an item on the ground is interacted with, it just swaps the current item with itself. The locks are also pretty easy to code. You can interact with them at any time, but they only do anything if the core node says you have the item it's looking for. I also began programming the monster. At this point it was just a purple square that walked around and ran after you if it saw you. It couldn't kill you or even change floors, but it was a start. I then made a basic wall tile set so I could start properly constructing a testing environment, made proper graphics for the doors and the locks, spent way too long trying to get the keys to look good in an 8x8 canvas, and even did some music, though it wouldn't become needed until much later. I finally ended off the day by making a cabinet that I called a bench. Nice. Day 2 began and I was at school again, goddamn. I decided to get the monster to move between floors. I gave it this way too complex code that would make it look like it was climbing along the back of the wall to get to where it was going. And now he's bouncing between the 2. This would later be a waste of time as I went for a different monster design to what I had in my head, but it was a cool thing to think about. I changed the way the doors worked so they could hold multiple locks instead of just the one, and realized that the blue key was the same color as the wall and was virtually invisible. This is the key, guys. The keys were also doing this really weird flickering thing, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was causing it. I looked things up on the internet, but there was nothing there. I eventually took to the Godot Discord server, but I was left without an answer still. Did start animating the player though, so hey, that's cool. Day 3 begins, and hey, guess what? The flickering thing I spent at least an hour of my time trying to solve was being caused by this stupid checkbox. Okay, it's working now. I decided that on day 3, I'd focus on making the chases with the monster a bit scarier. I added this cool filter that would cover your screen when the monster spotted you, and polished up the music I mentioned earlier so it was much more intense and hard-hitting. Not the most productive day, but it was progress nonetheless. Day 4 was spent entirely on making the monster come to life. I went for this dark, creepy design with glowing magenta features. Rather than hand animating the monster frame by frame, I decided to separate it into different limbs and rig it, because why the hell not? I'll tell you why the hell not, because it took up the whole damn day. I wasn't even near finished when I decided it was in my best interest to rest and come back to it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and I finish the monster animations, but it still takes up a massive chunk of my time. I decided at this point it was best to scrap the climbing along the wall thing I had planned and instead make him do these poorly animated pull-ups into the roof. I also began working on sound effects at this point. This was the first time I tried making sounds using my own microphone, and I gotta say, for a first attempt, I think I did pretty well. Day 6 was the day I finally decided to make a menu. I decided to make it static because... why did I make it static? I made more sound effects and finally changed the code that handled how the monster moved between the floors. Now instead of gliding between them, he does his pull-up animation and drops back down wherever he wants to. Okay, I kid you not, day 7 only has one bullet point and it's just, forgot to document progress LMAO. Day 7 is a mystery, I guess. At this point, we're halfway through the jam. You're probably halfway through this video. If you've made it this far, you're pretty cool. But you know what would be even cooler? If you liked and subscribed. Doing that helps the channel a lot, and it won't cost you a single dollar. That's all I have to say, moving on. Day 8 was the day I decided to add a kill animation. I really hope I got someone with that. It took the whole day to animate, but I think it was totally worth it. Day 9 I made the basic house layout and started putting locks and keys around the place to make up the main meat of the gameplay. I quickly came to a realization though. Locks and keys are... well, they're kind of boring. They serve the purpose, sure, but there's so little variety, and it doesn't feel like you're figuring anything out. Once you make the connection that silver key goes in silver lock, which is the very first thing you do in this game, you also make the connection that red key goes in red lock and blue key goes in blue lock, so on and so forth. So I decided to turn to the only appropriate game for inspiration, and that was... Piggy. Yeah, I know it's not a great game by any means, but I love this mediocre Lego meets Granny meets Peppa Pig game to bits. And I'll be honest, the item combos it comes up with can get pretty creative. I have not played this game for the longest time. You know, House would be a good chapter to look at. I should look at House. Crowbar, I've already got the hammer for that reason. The wrench and maybe keycard safes. The new Roblox death sound. By the end of the day, I had inspiration and added 8 new items into the mix. And another key, I just couldn't help myself. To spice it up a bit more, I also decided I'd add a new way of obtaining items, the item dispenser. The concept was simple. You bring it an item, interact with it, and it spits another item back out at you. These would become super important in mixing up the gameplay, as you're not constantly expanding the map and opening doors anymore, and you can get really creative with how these things work. Thanks to these new additions, the game isn't just key goes to matching padlock anymore. Now it's, what can I use these scissors for, or what item could break through this chain? This spiced up the gameplay a lot, and made for a much more enjoyable experience. Day 10 comes along, and I decided I'd rework the doors. The way the doors worked was that one door would take you to a location, rather than a door taking you to another door like they would do anyways. So instead of making 2 door nodes and relocating their end destinations to each other every time I wanted to link 2 rooms, I decided to make the doors come in pairs. Almost every door in the game worked like this already. I gave myself the painful task of redoing every door in the house from scratch, but it was absolutely worth it. Adding new rooms and connections was so much easier now. The house was fully finished. Day 11 was a lot of sound recording. Like, a lot. Almost any sound that was missing from the game was now present. It was a long, but admittedly quite fun task. I decided that the final door should have a combination lock and not a regular old key lock. So to help with this, I added another character into the game, this being the Hand. The Hand has a simple task. It's meant to be the justification for code bits being scratched into the walls. The code is also completely random every time you start a new game, so there's a reason to go hunting for them. Once you've found all 3 digit codes, you can unlock the front door and escape. Day 12 is when the panic kicks in. 3 days left and my game feels super far from finished. I rush to get as much done as possible in this one day so I can put it up on itch. I was starting to lose faith that I'd be able to add the true ending, but in all honesty, most of the tasks I had to do were way smaller than I expected. The combo lock was deceptively simple, cutscenes were easy as hell, the checkpoint system I set up was also way easier than I was anticipating, and the pause menu was a quick and easy setup thanks to Godot's incredible pause system. This is why we love you, Godot. Hell, I even had time to give items alternative spawning locations, mess around with the monster's behavior, and add this cool examine item feature, so you can learn more about what items do. All that, and I got to grapple with the pain of ICO files. I decided to make the icon this weird, monsterified version of the Godot logo for some reason. Don't know why I went for that, but I think it turned out pretty cool. Finally, the first version of Hunger was up on itch. Day 13 was spent re-implementing the true ending of the game. Funnily enough, it was really straightforward. The hardest part was the artwork. It still took up a fair chunk of my time, so the rest of day 13 was spent making small bug fixes. I decided to make the true ending not save at all. If you manage to get all the 3 items required for it to their respective location, but die after, you're gonna have to do it all again. Why did I do this, you ask? Because I was lazy. I mean, sure, it adds challenge to it, but really I just couldn't be bothered. Day 14 arrives and the jam is almost over. I'd given the game to a few friends to try out and they'd found some problems and bugs that had slipped by me. Shout out to you guys. You're awesome. I fixed the bugs they found and also made the events more clearly laid out. Finally, I added a very basic notes system. You could go around a place and find 8 notes that you'd be able to read to get some backstory and I published the final version to itch and started writing the script. Over the next few days, I played and rated a bunch of people's games, and began my blind playthrough of Ori and the Blind Forest over on Twitch, which you should go check out at twitch.tv/LifesASkit, or you can watch the VODs on my VODs channel, link in the description, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There are so many cool games here. Someone made a game that was 0 by 0. I'm not kidding, this is the game. There's so much creativity here. I'd highly suggest going and giving some of these games a play. You won't regret it. As for my game, things seem to go alright. Someone even played it on stream. Oh god, he's soft locked. Yeah, there are still a lot of bugs and holes in the game, but it's playable and that's the important bit. It's a game jam submission. It's not going to be perfect. I got a ton of great feedback and will undoubtedly do a post-jam update to the game, just to wrap things up and give it that extra bit of polish. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, drop a like on the video, and if you really enjoyed, feel free to subscribe. It doesn't cost you $1, and I want clout, give me internet I've got more game dev content on the way, so keep an eye out for that. For now though, that's all I got. See you next time. Lore! Oh, gosh. Doing a MatPat voice really kills my throat.